Hello. Welcome everyone to the stream, the second one, I guess. Today I will talk, as the title suggests, about the nature of time, and basically the interpretations of the theory of relativity and what that means to how we talk about time, I guess, and in what ways we are wrong when we talk about time in the day-to-day life or even in slightly less common scenarios. Well, I'm gonna start with just like the time is a dimension. I assume most people already know that, and like fundamentally, time is not much different from the spatial dimensions. And I guess for people who don't exactly remember what the spatial dimension is that to define any location of anything, you need three values to define where something is. And you cannot define where something is in less values unless you make some systems that make it not exactly applicable to everything in the universe. But yeah, so three values. Usually they're called X, Y, and Z. But our universe, as relativity suggests, is not a purely in three dimensions. It's said that we have four dimensions, and the fourth dimension is time. Because to say where something is exactly, you would also need to say when it is. If you say, meet me at the restaurant at some street, but you show up there in 3 years after the other person showed up there, you will not see each other. You will both not be at the same place. But if you also tell them the time, then you can both be in the same place. So that's basically like the understanding of why time is a dimension. But there's another reason why time is considered a dimension in the theory of relativity, and that's because space can influence time, and so can time. They're not static compared to each other. They can change. I think it's known to most people that space can be bent by very heavy things or things that move very quickly or things that have high energy. And this bending of space-time is basically what also creates gravity, which is incredibly important for everything in the universe. There wouldn't be any stars, planets, basically anything that we know of without gravity. And we even speak of gravity as a fundamental force in the quantum models. Well, not quantum, but the standard model for particles. But as the theory of relativity suggests, gravity is not a force, but instead, how the curvature of space-time makes matter move. And okay, so let's get back to time, because that's the topic of this conversation, I guess. Monologue, I guess, would be a better word for this, yeah. So we've established that when space is curved, that affects how stuff in space moves. For example, we have documented how light from distant galaxies or stars curves around massive objects like galaxies or black holes, and by that we can see that the curvature of space-time affects how things in the spatial dimensions behave. But we have also documented that time doesn't flow equally for everything. We have GPS satellites in orbit which move incredibly fast, and for them, time actually flows slightly slower. And we record that because GPS satellites, they require to have very precise timings. They have atomic clocks on board of them, so they can very precisely measure the time that they are experiencing. And we found that it doesn't align with our time. And that is explained by the theory of relativity, which says that things that are moving fast, or basically in areas where spacetime is curved as well, time can change its speed. And there's another thing that, like, all of that was pretty commonly known. Like, pretty much any person who went through school will know that. But there is a very intuitive and good way of looking at it, and that is thinking that every object in the universe moves at the exact same speed at all moments in time. Well, yeah, at all moments in time, everything is moving at the exact same speed. I'm sure there is a name for it. I like calling it the unifying vector. Well, unifying speed. But anyways, and that speed is c, the speed of light, which I don't like calling the speed of light. It suggests it has something to do with light. Not much to do with light, at least not. It's not a good description for explaining this topic. I think it's much better to call it, like, for the purposes of this topic, for it being more intuitive, to call it the propagation speed of, for example, gravity. Like, if the mass of something changes, the time until some other object in the universe will feel more gravity towards that point because the mass has changed. And it will take time. It isn't instant, and that time is the same as the speed of light would be. And I mean, okay, everyone's already used to calling the speed of light, which is why I still will. It's also abbreviated as c, its symbol, so I will also sometimes call it that. But basically, let's go back to that every object in the universe moves at the same speed at all times. And that speed is c, but I mean, you can of course say that there are objects that are just stationary, they're not moving anywhere. And of course, it seems for us this way because how do we define moving? And we basically define moving as something stopping, like something changing its location. Like, it was in this location, then started being in another location. That's basically how we define moving. And well, something in the universe, of course, can have one location and then in some time still have the same location. Like, that is not a problem. We observe that all the time, so why am I saying that everything moves at the same speed? And that speed is like a giant speed of the speed of light. I mean, we've noticed things that are just stationary. But you might have already noticed in how I said that if we measure its position, its location in a few seconds, it will be the same, but it will be the same in the spatial coordinates, not in the temporal ones. A few seconds have passed. Those few seconds are where it moved. And it moved, if we get into the equations of relativity, it moves exactly at the speed of light through time. And we actually have established that basically that we can convert between it, and the conversion factor is 300 million meters into a second. So it is actually somewhat correct to say that 1 second is 300 million meters, because when we move at the normal velocity that everything moves through space-time, that is always that speed. And if you move through space faster, then you have to take away from the velocity that you have through time, because you always have to move at that speed, at that single speed of c. So that is why something that moves fast is moving slower through time. And of course, it's relative, because speed is not exactly something static, something fixed, you know? If you're moving away from Earth, who has the speed? The Earth or you? Because from your both perspectives, the other one will be moving at the exact same speed away. You could, like, when you're moving away from Earth, you can absolutely argue that the Earth is moving away from you. There is no physical difference. And in theory of relativity as well, there is no physical difference. Time is flowing at the same speed for you and Earth when you are moving away from Earth at great speeds. But why is it then that when you come back to Earth after moving away from Earth for a while, your time that you have recorded will be behind Earth's? You will have aged less than the Earth has in your journey. And that is because you will change your inertial frame. So first you started going away. You started accelerating. Acceleration is something fixed. Acceleration is not relative to something. You know when you're accelerating, and like you can always say that something is accelerated or something isn't accelerating. It doesn't matter from where you are looking, unlike speed. But acceleration on its own doesn't actually change anything with time. Acceleration doesn't act on time, only speed does, because, well, to make you go slower through time, you have to go faster through space so that your total speed of 1c is shared through both space and time, and to, well, let it be shared to not exceed the speed of light, because, well, you cannot do that. Nothing can move faster than the speed of light. You will start going slower through time. A good graphic for that, imagine a three-dimensional graph, like very simple graph, 3 dimensions. Let's just dump down our universe into just having 2 spatial dimensions and 1 temporal dimension. Every object that is stationary is always moving at 1c through time. So at the speed of light through time, and and you can picture that on the diagram as just a straight line up, and the up axis, which is called y usually, is the time axis. But then, if you want to start going at, let's say, 100 million meters per second, well, that's a third of the speed of light, roughly. You start moving at that speed through space along the x-axis now. Now, your speed will have to change through time, because your total speed cannot be exceeded. So you will start going slower through time, because now the arrow of your movement, like, if we imagine a vector as an arrow with its length being the vector and its direction being the direction, or length being the magnitude, direction being the direction, then the arrow is like, this is just simple trigonometry, something that basically, if it's not a straight line, it's not the fastest way to get there. If you're not going through a straight line through time, but at the diagonal, we are not going through it at the same speed. Like if we just only look at the t dimension. But okay, let's get back to things that we can actually understand without having to draw it, because, well, currently playing Minecraft, I don't have the capacity to draw. I'm currently mining sponges. But anyways, back to how time flows. Well, that is also another thing. The actual purpose of this video is not just to explain that time can be different. I kind of assume that people already know that clicking on this video. What I wanted to talk about is, again, how we speak about time flowing. You might have already heard I use the word flowing or moving through time quite a lot over the past some time. But as we established the definition of moving before, moving is when you stop being at one location and then start being in another location, so you change your location. But here again, you hear the words start or stop. Those are time-dependent words. You cannot stop in a universe where time doesn't exist, because in a universe where time doesn't exist, your current position is your position forever. There is no time, though, to allow you to change that position. And when you're speaking about moving through time, you'd need a second temporal dimension to actually move through time. No, you're not moving through time. You, like any object, I'm talking currently, but also, well, that includes you, the viewer. You are all throughout time okay, again, I want to say at the same time, but no, you're not at the same time, because there is no time to speak of. We don't exactly have a word for when you are somewhere without time, because, well, we have never lived in a universe without time. Why would we make a word for that? But it is something that happens when you actually talk about the time dimension. There is no second time dimension to let you properly phrase it. And so now I want to say something else. My point is also that, well, okay, we like the term size, something has some size. It can be like, it can be tall, it can be long, it can be wide. But it can also be long, We don't have a term, but I guess the term walk through time is something that we can use. Oh yeah, back to just the nature of humans. We think of humans as being three-dimensional entities, but we're not. We're four-dimensional entities. Humans look very differently from how we imagine humans, because we only look at humans, or like we only record humans basically at one point in time. Like we don't have pictures of a human that span multiple seconds or multiple years or multiple decades. We do have some videos, but videos are not pictures. Videos are sequences of pictures, and that, like, you cannot exactly picture something with the time dimension in a picture. So we use the time dimension in videos. So like a video is basically a picture with the time dimension. We use that to picture humans, but we never look at a human in its entirety, even in videos. Like, we do not have a video of a human that spans from their birth to their death. I mean, I guess there are some videos of, a baby being born and then being killed. I'm sure that's something humanity has done at some point. Then yes, then you can say that you have a picture of an entire human. But then we don't say that a person who is old, or like through their entire life, has lived a longer life than another person, is bigger than that other person, if they're like if their spatial size is not. So we use the word bigger just for spatial dimensions, even though there's not much difference between the spatial and temporal dimension. We could use the word bigger for also including the time dimension, or we could think of another word that means bigger but includes the time dimension. That is very interesting linguistic things that might be developed and might be actually useful sometimes in some conversation. I mean, currently they're of course not. We don't speak that much about time to require these words or definitions. I mean, okay, nothing I'm talking in this video is like something very useful, just something interesting to talk about, and that's why I'm talking about it. It's not like I know an awful lot on it either. There's just an interesting thing to talk about. But okay, back to so I've already discussed how we are not moving through time. Nothing is moving through time, and that's exactly why I named the video how I did. I named it "We Are Not Moving Through Time," which we aren't. But we could argue that our consciousness is moving through time, and I argue that we perceive ourselves as being in a moment of time at any point, and we perceive our consciousness as moving through time as well, and we also perceive our consciousness moving forward through time. That's another actually very interesting characteristic of time compared to spatial dimensions. There is a very specific direction in time. Like, you can always identify which direction time is. I mean, not by the which direction time is going, because time isn't going anywhere. Time is a dimension. Like, there is no flow through time. It's just all objects are moving at one c through time, unless they're also moving in spatial dimensions, which they're not. So their time isn't flowing. What is flowing through time is our consciousness. And why is our consciousness not flowing backwards in time? Well, we have established that there is one direction in time, and that direction is towards increased entropy. Entropy is I think entropy has been explained very poorly throughout human history, well, since its kind of definition, since we first defined entropy. Many people call it disorder. I mean, it has a good definition. It has a unit as well. It's not exactly disorder, and I think calling it disorder is very bad, because we use disorder for other things, or the word order in our language. Like, when your room is not organized, we call it disorder, but the entropy in an organized room and an organized room can be higher or lower. It doesn't actually depend on it being organized. It's much more to do with temperature. But the definition of entropy is quite difficult. I'm not gonna get into that. Let's just say entropy is a thing, and entropy can be high or low, because that's all we need for this particular conversation. So I'm saying that through time there is a very exact direction, well, not just me saying that, that's kind of known in the scientific community in general. There is a specific direction through time, and that's towards increased entropy. In other in spatial dimensions, we don't have that. We cannot say that there is a specific dimension, a specific direction along the x-axis. Well, there isn't. Like going into one direction, going to other direction doesn't have basically any fundamental difference. But in time, there is, and so why I started talking about this? I started talking about this because I wanted to talk about how we are not flowing through time. Well, time isn't moving, but our consciousnesses are, and they moving forward through time, and argue that consciousness is moving forward through time because the conditions for consciousness to exist can only happen when entropy is increasing. And that is, of course, like you come to that conclusion if you assume that we are the only consciousness in the universe. There could be other consciousnesses that travel backwards through time. But it would be also difficult for them slightly, because you cannot change anything. I mean, okay, the word change is also a bad. Okay, I'm just not gonna go down that rabbit hole. Well, stuff came up. I have to go. I think I talked about most of the stuff. I talked very incoherently currently. My brain is not exactly in a good place, and I'm also playing Minecraft. It takes a surprising amount of brain power to clear out water. You'd be surprised. Maybe it's just me not having enough brain power to clear out water and talk about the relativity and the flow of time and dimensions while clearing out water. Well, I might continue to talk about this sometime next. Maybe I develop some more ideas. Maybe I find ways to talk about it simpler and explain it better. But I think this one was pretty bad. Well, it's still gonna be published as a stream. Well, goodbye. Thank you.